Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are on Saturday, December 21st. We're going to take a look at SoFi today. So SoFi continues to get a little bit dippy as the macro forces in the market get a little bit more shaky. And of course, something that's had a run like this from $6 back in August of 2024 to $17 in December, these stocks are going to get hit the hardest for sure. If it's down 2% on the NASDAQ, these puppies are going to get hit with like this, like an 8% down day. But it's showing signs to want to try to stabilize. And so I wanted to come in and sort of see what levels might be critical, what I'm sort of watching most closely with my own position to decide whether or not it's time to lock in profit and then look for repositioning later, or if it's a potential like dip buy opportunity or just a hold and continue. That's just sort of what I'm assessing for myself. Obviously, you have to make your own decisions, but the critical level that I was speaking about last time was 1548. Now, obviously, for the time being at least, it has dipped below that. I wouldn't say that it's necessary put it in the realm yet of confirming that as resistance. To me, it does still look like, we're only 3 candles into this thing, but it does look like it's kind of wrestling with it. What's a good example here? There must be one. Like if you had looked at this level and you had said, okay, 1356 is critical, and you had seen it put in these like 4 candles where it was kind of progressively dipping below 1356, you could have said, oh, it's flipping it to resistance, but that wasn't what was happening. It was just wrestling with it. And what it happens when it wrestles with it is sometimes it's a little bit above, sometimes it's a little bit below, and ultimately then, it moves. And then the move is actually the indication of what's happening. So it flipped it back to support here and carried on. If it had confirmed resistance here and moved down to the next level, then yeah, that's a different thing. It's no longer wrestling with it. So that's sort of where I am on this 1548 at the moment. If it can continue to hold and not start pushing to that 1443, that's pretty critical, because the moment it starts playing with the next level that I have on the chart, I start to really think, okay, it's no longer wrestling with that level, and it's now moved on to sort of starting some interplay with a level below. So that's my first sort of thing that I'm watching. But again, to my mind, I would consider this move, even though this looks really sort of like wicking off of a level, that it's still wrestling with it. Am I saying that it can't flip this to resistance and it can't just push hard off of this next week and come down? No, of course it can. But to me, this isn't the confirmation of resistance yet. If it does push down, I'd look for 1443 to, if not hold, put up a pretty good fight. You see the double top here, and then that's where it pushed through to make that move to 1548. And then it did, have a slower progression working off of 1548 to get through 1649 and then make that attempt into the 17s. So it's not super surprising that, on the way down, it may have a little bit of a stickier time here, and then I would hope that it gets a little bit bouncier if it does come down to 1443. If it can't hold that, 1356, 1268, so on and so forth, you see down here. Sorry, I'm a little congested today, so I'm trying to not be wildly obnoxious on the mic while also trying to get my sounds and my words out. So it's a little bit of a mess. But on the EMA side of things, this is pretty critical to me. It's come down to, for the first time in a long time, since this whole move began, from, say, if we look at it back in October, if we count like this as the really big move, right? There was a little bit of a move here, obviously. If we count this as the really big move kicking off, it has never needed to come down and test the 34, right? It tested the 21 here, near the 21 here. And then when it had this minus 8.5% day, it came down through the 21, wrestled with the 21 the following day, and then on Friday, yesterday, needed to test that 34. That 34 is situated at 1548. and the low yesterday was exactly 1458. Is that what I said? 1458? I might have misspoke there, but yeah, 1458 is correct. Now, my concern here, or what would look concerning to me, it's not that this is my concern, but what would maybe indicate to me that, yeah, maybe it is time to pack up bags and look for a re-entry point, would be if we get some bearish crossovers happening here. So the 8 dipping below the 21 and the 8 then moving toward the 34, right? We start to get some indications of bearish crossovers happening, and those short-term EMAs pushing through each other, then yeah, that would make me concerned that it's going to be able to hold the 34 versus just getting into a resistance point where it flips and starts to look something like this, where it's off the 34 and then obviously this was a big gap down day, so this looks a little weird, but similar idea. And then we get these bearish crossovers here, and then it kind of just gets pinned under those until it starts to recover some. So if you've been in SoFi for a long time, you know that the pain train can come fast and furious. And so maybe we're a little bit, we have our spotlights up a little bit too much, but you have to have some sort of a plan, and that's mine at the moment. These, the other thing here is these volume shelves that we look at, if we sort of come into this period from back here when it was in the 7s, it's getting a little bit sticky in there, and maybe it's going to be able to hold this one, but it did sort of lose these relatively large shelves, and so it does get a little bit thin in here until you get sort of into this range that we talked about before, this like high 13 to mid 13s, and even then that's not the most impressive, but it's a long haul down here to some of the more aggressive positioning levels. So we'll see if that comes into play or not. I don't necessarily take that as a be-all end-all sort of thing, but to me the EMAs are probably the most interesting at the moment, and then these levels as well, the 1443 versus the 1548. Again, my big bullish hope there is that this is just a wrestling of the 1548, and that there's going to be more action that's going to be able to take place there. Distribution, a little over half of shares are profited at close on yesterday, per Webull anyway, and you can see where that distribution lies at the moment. This would seemingly indicate that there was a lot of buy-in, above where the close was on Friday, but just meaning that there's been a lot of buy-in since sort of this push here. When we got into here, there was a lot of buying up in here, which is borne out if we look at the volume, right? That's this huge volume in here, and so those folks are now getting a bit underwater. So it's almost surprising to see where it is price-wise, knowing the history, and then seeing that it's only 51% of shares are profited. But large scale coming out pretty heavy on Friday, so it'll be interesting to see what those 49% of folks that bought in above where it closed on Friday, what they do with it. Are they willing to hold? For them, the price point down here is going to be a dip buy, right? They're going to average down their cost per share. So will they see that as a buying opportunity, whereas folks who are profited already may see it as not really a dip buy opportunity because they're still sort of averaging up. But I know it's not something that I would say you shouldn't do, but it just has to align with whatever your strategy is. But it will be interesting to see that 49% of folks not profited, even though the chart looks like this. And what do those folks do? Do they see this as a dip buying opportunity and then come in to sort of scoop up these shares around 15? Maybe that would be quite interesting. On the ThinkorSwim side of things, a couple of interesting things happen. One is, yes, while we do have the bullish momentum dying down here on the histogram for the TTM squeeze indicator, we are 3 candles in now to trigger. So we'll see if that bears anything out. Let's see the previous time we had a trigger and a fire. It's sort of like back-to-back trigger and fires here. And and not a whole lot happened. So it may sort of breed or bring nothing, but something, to keep an eye on, at least, as it has been pretty volatile as of late. The thing that concerns me when I look at the ThinkorSwim study are the ATR levels. So for one, again, similarly to what I was saying over there with the 1548 level, this mid-range of the channel right now, this bright blue line, it is sort of wrestling with it, but it is getting progressively lower. But again, I would consider this, if I'm not just in panic mode, I would consider this a wrestling of the mid-range of the channel. But it is pretty securely beneath the put trigger at the moment, and that's coming off the back of like a triple rejection of the call trigger. The call trigger is 1709, and it rejected 3 candles off of that, came straight down into the put trigger range, and now putting in price action below the put trigger, which is 1573, that has a -1 ATR of 1353. That all resets in January. So this is just literally for the month of December. So my concern is if it does get a little bit dippy, that 1353, that might bear out, that might come into play. We do see it moving through this range the last couple of months when it gets into a trigger. It didn't back here when it was a little bit more lackadaisical, but it has been jumpy lately, right? It has, the last few months, it's been a bit more volatile. When it was just consolidating forever in this range, yeah, it was not reaching the plus or the -1 hardly ever, or maybe never, through this range. And so at those periods of times, it maybe wouldn't have been so concerning if it got under a put trigger, or maybe it wouldn't be so exciting if it got above a call trigger. But given that the last couple of months it has been really, really volatile and prone to big moves, you have to remember that if we get the big moves to the upside, that opens the door for big moves to the downside. Volatility is just volatility in both directions. And so now that it is below the call trigger, or below the put trigger, I do get a little bit cautious about whether it's going to bear out that -1 ATR. We'll see, but that's that's probably the most concerning thing that I see from either of the two charts. But again, if I can keep these top of mind, 1548 to 1443 are the levels that I'm looking at. If I'm just looking at a chart and I want it to be clean and clear and concise, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, do bearish crossovers start to happen, or does SoFi continue to build and push off of this 34 EMA, and it was just a little bit of a dippy do, and we're going to carry on. Whether that means we're going to carry on and consolidate into a range and then take the next big move, or we're going to push higher and retarget that 17 or whatever. We'll have to see. But to me, looking for any indication of bearish crossovers here with the short term, or that not happening, are the cleanest and clearest way to just look at the chart quickly. All right, folks. Well, I hope that you have a nice weekend. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.